Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It is Monday, September 1st, the 244th day of the year, the day the Titanic was discovered at the bottom of the ocean, and Zendaya's birthday. Zendaya is now 29 years old, 9 years older than Amanda Knox was in 2007 when she was accused of murdering her roommate Meredith Kercher. The subject of today's podcast is one of the most highly publicized true crime stories of the last 20 years. This Hulu adaptation may be a little late to the party.
Do you think it's like Peacock's Joe V. Carroll, where they were jumping on the bandwagon after Tiger King had already become a success? Because if you remember with that, Tiger King came out in 2020, and then like Joe V. Carroll came out like 2 years later.
Yeah, but the events of Joe V. Carroll were like from the previous 4 years, while this is a case, again, from 2007, and the book that it's based on was
Came
written
out
in 2013.
late April 2013, yeah.
And even her boyfriend's book, or her ex-boyfriend, Raphael, his book came out in 2012. There have been multiple more versions of memoirs and books and films and documentaries and podcasts of varying degrees of accuracy dedicated.
I mean, Amanda Knox, she's doing stand-up now.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Like comedy?
Yeah, she talked to Dak Shepard about it. She said if you can't laugh about what happened, then how
Okay,
else
so it
you're
is
supposed to
about her. It's still about her experience,
Yes.
but it's like a Mike Birbiglia guy, where he talks about
Yeah.
his sleep apnea and stuff like that. Anyway, so this TV show is based specifically on Waiting to Be Heard, a memoir, which was that 2013 book, but it also incorporates events of a secret meeting that took place in 2022 between Knox and former prosecutor Giuliano Mignini. So within the story, within these 3 episodes, which I watched, the names of those episodes being Amanda, Si Vediamo Più Tardi, and The Guardian of Perugia, you also get interspliced with her narrative, his narrative, which is an interesting choice. But I first want to talk a little bit about what I knew about the case going into it. Right? My prior knowledge was very limited. I remember in 2015 reading some sort of article talking about a case where there was an American who was connected to this murder in Italy, and there was double jeopardy. Double jeopardy kept on being promoted in the headlines because in America, you don't get that, right? Once you've been tried for a crime, you can't be retried for that crime.
Right, but yeah, in Italy, it was very
And so it was a big
different.
deal there.
Because you could also show new evidence. That was a big thing.
I think they also have double jeopardy rules there, but it was like once the verdict is finalized, and her verdict, even though she was serving time, had never been finalized, like it was still in the appeal process.
Yeah, she appealed it right away.
Right. So it's a little bit different there. I haven't thought about this case in 10 years. I know that every once in a while, a highly publicized thing happens where an American in a foreign country, something happens to them. In 2005, it was Aruba and Natalie Holloway, her disappearance. In 2007, it's Amanda Knox being accused of murder, and the headlines just run wild, and it goes worldwide, right? But Hulu likes to make these things into adaptations. In 2023, they did Saint X, which was adapting the Natalie Holloway experience. That got canned.
Right.
This is a much more, I think, based on the novel approach. It's way more of a documentary than a docudrama.
Amanda Knox has almost full creative control of this thing. In fact, she even co-wrote the finale with the creator of this show.
Right.
KJ
Again, we're only
Steinberg.
speaking about the first 3
No,
episodes.
I understand, but I'm saying that a lot of the times when Hulu does do this, I think of Pam and Tommy or something like that. They may get good wishes from the people that were involved in the actual story, but that's usually as far as it goes. Amanda Knox, though, she's really.
We did another docudrama earlier this year, which took some facts and took some fiction with Apple Cider Vinegar.
Right.
That was the other Caitlin Devers series.
But that was Netflix, right?
That was Netflix. It also did the thing where you had the main character speaking to the camera. The funny thing is the book wasn't written by the main character of the show, so it was a little bit weird. This, you could tell that it was based on Amanda Knox's book, but the show was created by KJ Steinberg.
Right.
And it premiered August 20th. And so let's just run down these first 3 episodes. The first episode introduces us to Amanda, how she got to Perugia, her roommates, her friends, her personality, her job, her life, the day after Meredith's murder, how Amanda's behavior begins to rub people the wrong way, and how it colors the police's vision of what could have happened.
How is she portrayed? What is she like prior to the murder and after the murder?
Well, the murder stresses her out like it would anybody. But yeah, she is, because she's not Italian and she's not as like close to the friend groups as like she was closer to Meredith, who's
Right.
been murdered, than she was to anybody else. And so she is in shock, and she also doesn't speak Italian very well. So when the cops are interviewing her, the only person she has to like lean on is Raphael. And she does that really heavily to a point where it starts to piss other people off.
Are they together in the TV series, like, in
Yeah,
real
yeah, yeah.
life?
They've been together for about a week. And so he is a new boyfriend for her, but they do like each other quite a lot. They were having sex the night that Meredith was murdered at his place. And so yeah, she's shown before she moves to Italy as still being sort of outgoing, nerdy, not afraid to kind of just like sing in public and do kind of wacky things. But it's part of the reason she went to Italy for her junior year in college was to kind of like change her life and make new experiences and broaden her scopes and stuff like that. That's how that's presented, at least. Episode 2, the police crack down on her, and Amanda gets flustered. Her boyfriend tries to console her. She becomes the main suspect in the murder, and both her and her boyfriend are separated and interrogated and coerced into signing different
She
confessions.
was held for over 50 hours over 4 days.
Over 4 days.
Is that what the second episode is all about?
Yeah, especially the last like 20 so minutes, you really get that claustrophobic feeling of her being in a cramped room between 2 to like 11 people just hounding her for information. Then she finally breaks when Monica, one of the two like main detective ladies, come in and says, "Your boyfriend just killed your alibi. He's admitted that you weren't at his place at a certain time." And that's what really sends her into a spiral to the point where it seems like she's just willing to say whatever to get out of there.
No attorney, no questioning, and these people were, like, trained to break mafia suspects, so I'm not
Well,
surprised that the show
don't make them out to be like,
that's I mean, I watched the 48 hours for this episode, and that's exactly what they
I
said.
know, but these were the Perusian police. I'm jumping ahead here, but remember how I said that Raphael came out with his own book
Right.
a year before Amanda came out with her own book?
Yes.
He goes more into detail in his book about how when they make the phone call originally to the police, they were actually calling a different police station. And had that police station been able to get there earlier, they would have been in charge of the case and it would have been held in a much more professional manner. The way that they held these interrogations, not recording them and just going about it in this very like, we need to get her to confess as soon as possible. You're right. It's like them going after a mafia suspect or something. But at the same time, it is so unprofessional. It shows that it's like a little town police force versus a national police force. Like it's just different that the way they went about it. Episode 3, she's immediately sent to prison, and it's about her life in prison. She gets sexually harassed from day one. Meeting her lawyers, she finally gets to do that. She finally also gets to see her mom. But the media at this point is just spinning headlines like she's some sex craved maniac. And that's basically the full episode.
The
It's
whole
just
thing?
different versions of her getting in a worse and worse position every time she meets with the lawyers or is in front of any sort of judgment panel or even the prosecuting attorney again who runs the investigation, unlike in America where you have that divergence between the police
Right.
and the prosecution. This guy is the one leading the case. And when he interrogates her again in front with the lawyers present, he gets her to kind of like concede that her story doesn't make as much sense because she gets flustered
Was
once
this
again.
Giuliano Magnini?
Yes. Yeah, he is also the guy we see in the first episode have this secret meeting with her that takes place in the future, 2022. This is all within 10 days. You're talking about like it's November 1st to like November 11th or something, where she's in jail already and she started her diary and they're doing crazy stuff to like mess with her head. Perugia, let's just talk about the show.
Yeah.
Looks fancy. It looks like a European city that you would want to go to as a tourist. We've been to Italy.
Yeah.
We've experienced the police in Italy in a very, very minute way where we got too close to some random house and they stopped us and they said, "Hey, let's see those passports." And we showed them the passports. They didn't speak a lick of English. If there was anything I bonded with Amanda in this show, it's that I know she'd been there for, like, I don't know, a month or so, 6 weeks, but her Italian was not up to par where it needed to be in order to go against these police. And when we were talking to police, the only word that they understood that I said was "problem," and they said, "No problem, no problem." And I was very happy to hear that. They took a picture of the passports, and then they let us go on our way.
I mean, she's talked about, obviously, the incident and has explained how, like, she didn't even know what was going on for hours on end after her roommate was murdered. They shot for the show across Europe, including Perugia, Italy, Budapest, Hungary, Vancouver, Canada, and
This is
Ireland.
not a Lifetime movie. It is not. It's got good direction. It's not a soap opera. The main actress sells it. The vindictive
Grace Van
cops,
Patten, yeah.
the vindictive cops and the warden are perfectly awful. No bad acting. It's artsy. They do this like Amelia thing. Amelie. Sorry,
Amelie,
sorry, sorry,
yeah.
sorry. I have it written in my notes, and I know Amelie, but like it's her favorite movie, and it's also one of the movies that she watched, or the movie she watched the night that her friend was
It
murdered.
was an inspiration for this. That's why, like Amanda Knox was saying, they tried to pay homage to it as much as they could because it's so surreal, that
It's
film.
interesting that they chose to do it that way. I'm not sure if
Right.
it helps the show. The one thing I don't like, though, is the prosecution's narration. He takes over at certain points, and it's like, it's unnecessary. Stick with what the book does, and it's just from her perspective. I understand they're trying to humanize him because since the trial, or in the last however many years, he and her have worked up a better relationship, it seems like.
They
We'll
have
get in.
not become yeah, they have not become friends, and he even still believes Knox was there at times. It's
Weird.
just the fact that he has a good opinion of her, so it's very strange. But she did reach out to him, I think, like, in 2016, trying to understand his point of view more, I think.
I didn't read the reviews for this at all, but I did see a headline that said something along the lines of like they still text each other every day. That sounded crazy.
I didn't hear that, but
Okay. But there's like this feeling that I get while watching the show that was really frustrating. Probably the thing I hate the most, which is the feeling of it being a skewed point of vision, that it's a Hollywood version of events. And so there were so many infuriating details while watching this where I was like, am I being manipulated? Did this actually happen? Did she say this actually happened? I hate embellishments if they're just completely conjured up out of nowhere.
Right.
So what I needed to do just to confirm that it matched the book's account was I did go through some of the book. You read some of the book too,
I
right?
read, like, the first 4 chapters.
I read the first 18. I
Okay.
read the first half of the book, which covers where we are in the plot. I didn't ruin anything else for myself. If I want to ever finish the
It
series,
spans years, right, the book?
no, the book by chapter 18 is literally within the first 20 days of her stay in from November 1st to November like 20th or 16th or something like that.
Yeah.
However, it does talk about her prior life, if that's what you talk. Like it just,
I
but so
think
does the show.
I think the book ends somewhere around 2011, and it starts in, like, April 2007, but
Right.
yeah.
But where we are in the show and where we are in it's still now. It's
Right.
still November like 15th or something like that. And so what I was surprised by though is that all the crazy shit lines up. So her being hit by an interrogator multiple times while being coerced into a confession.
Yeah.
She says that happened. The doctor's telling her that she might have HIV to drive up her stress levels and manipulate her while she's in jail. That happened. But or at least she says it happened. Bugging her and Raphael's phone almost day one of the investigation and listening in, yet not recording any of the interrogations, which they later on said that was because they didn't have enough recording equipment because of budgetary
Right,
costs, but they were
right.
able to still every conversation that they had with their parents, listening to that. Crazy. The pseudo warden sexually harassing her every day. It's in the book, it says it's not the warden. It's like the second tier guy down. He still has his own office. He still calls her in almost every day to ask her like what sort of sex she likes. And he's this old creepy perv dude. And his name is Argiro. And I think he's not, she wasn't the only one to like call him out on this type of stuff. The police taking her diary, the thing that she was confiding into when she was trying to stay sane,
Right.
and then leaking it to the media. That happened.
When you say media, sorry, I just wanna make it clear, was it also the US media? Have they shown the US at all getting their hands on it?
They show mostly the European, like they show English media. I'm not sure if it's the US or if it's like British, but they show the Foxy Noxy thing. So what's interesting about Foxy Noxy, which is what they portrayed her as like this femme fatale
Right.
character,
That was her name, I think, back in high school or something?
the nickname that she got on the soccer team, everybody got their own like weird nickname, but like she talked about that being from her MySpace profile. And what's funny is she had graduated at that point to Facebook, and she had just left that on there. So I feel like that's another thing I can understand, having lived that myself, where it's like there's still stuff on my MySpace profile I haven't looked at in years. Like it's crazy to think that they they knew that that wasn't the most current version of her,
But they still decided to try and make
and
it
they
that
still,
way.
and it was like an underage version of her that they were like pulling out and showing us pictures and stuff like that. The police omitting the full possible crime scene downstairs, that was, I think, the cliffhanger of the first or second episode, where they say, even though there's all this blood, it was probably just cat's blood. And so we're not going to include it in our
Right.
investigation. Completely just, we're not going to include a crime scene. That was so egregious. That was one of the things where I was like, I have to just read the book to see
Right,
if
no, because
that's how it
it
happened.
was 54 mistakes even in gathering of the DNA when they initially were looking at the scene that was made. It really does seem like this Magnini, person in real life was just so
It wasn't just
hell-bent.
him, because the way they show it is like all the Rita, terrible cop, Monica, terrible cop. Everybody was just jumping on each other's backs to try to push her to the crime scene, even though she had an alibi. They did take a couple liberties in the show. One is like she does have a roommate, and we see her in the show take down the covering to her TV to watch the scrolling news feed of the stuff that's happening to her. While in the real life that didn't happen. There's no mention of her other boyfriend, or like the person that she's having a long distance sort of relationship with. Technically, they're not together, but it's funny because I also read about 70 pages of Raphael's book, and there's this guy named DJ that he is so jealous of. In that same time, like she would be Skyping him in these few days, and he would be thanking Raphael for looking out for her. It
But
must have been so awkward.
is DJ he's not in the show, right?
He's not in the show at all, but she does talk about her prior relationships, so she might be written in the notes there. But it's funny, in Raphael's book, he's talked about a good sum, but in Amanda's book, not even mentioned
Not
at
at all.
all. So it's just a funny, different perspective. And then also the autopsy guy, we get a big thing about that in the Hulu version, where he has redacted or said that he cannot make a determination about certain things about Meredith's body, which goes against what the prosecuting guy wants him to do and ends up getting him fired. We don't see that in the books yet. So that didn't happen through chapter 18. So maybe she's taking events that happened later on and incorporating it earlier, but they did have to congest certain things in order to fit it into 3 hours of television.
Right, because she does, like, yoga, like, in the show, right?
Right. So you're talking about where there was an incident where I think Rita walked out and she was doing the splits, and one of the cops was interviewing her at the time, but he was doing sort of a more kind interview where he was just talking to her in the lobby. And that was the thing that precipitated her having to go in and start an interrogation in the middle of the night at the same time that Raphael was.
Right, I think in real life, the cop said that she was doing the splits and cartwheel, and she hasn't
No,
gone.
so I think there was an article that came out later on that said that she was doing cartwheels. And then she had to, in her book and other places, explain that no, she was just doing the splits. And it was only for like a second because he wanted to see some sort of yoga thing. They did it in the show. I think they did it well. What sort of comparisons would you make for this?
Well, I would say that, like, any other kind of what we talked about, like, The Dropout or something like that, any other, like, true crime, thing as well, right?
Yeah, a young woman who, but in that case, in the same thing with apple cider vinegar, the woman is like making up stuff as she goes along. And I understand that Amanda Knox goes to prison because she did slander, but that coerced confession is shown that she only put Patrick at the scene of the crime because she was kind of like just mentally manipulated into doing
I
so.
understand that Amanda Knox was the prime suspect during this time, but did they ever make it seem like it was going to be anybody else? Is this like an under the
Right.
bridge scenario where they
So
like
we know in real life who did
right,
this. It's what's his name? Guide? What's his name?
Good Day, I think,
Good day.
something,
Thank
yeah.
you. Yeah. And so he ran away to Germany, and his life story, from what I was reading, and that I mostly got from the 70 pages from Raphael's book. He explains it that that guy who's only like 20 himself, but he was well known to the police for like breaking and entering and
Right.
stealing and
Yeah.
stuff like that. One of the things that's crazy about him is he was adopted when he was like 17 by a really rich family in Perugia. And so he had it all like his life set out and still screwed it up and started doing this petty crime. But it's highly like I want to compare this series to Dark Wolf because in Dark Wolf, what happens in the first episode, Taylor Keish's character, Ben Edwards, he gets really mad because he finds out that the army is protecting this terrorist because he's an informant, right?
Jabori, I think his name was.
And we think, at least, or we, at least Raphael thinks that part of the reason that the
Good day.
G'day
Yeah.
guy was protected was because he may have been a police informant. Because apparently a few weeks before the Meredith incident, her murder, there had been another break-in where they caught him
Right.
and they let him go after a phone call. And they think that it might be because he was working for the police already. And so maybe that's why they gave him a pass.
And I think his jail sentence was originally like 25 years, and then it was shortened to something like 16.
Right. This became a trial by media, and the police were using that to their advantage until everything started to fall apart for them. I would compare this mostly to Unbelievable and Dr. Death, the season 2, episode 5. Both of those are enraging to watch, anger-inducing, infuriating stories. Both of them, I think, are better than this.
Mhm.
Mostly because this story has been talked to death.
So you think it's a situation because there was the Netflix series as well of it just being adapted too many times.
Yeah, to the point where it doesn't feel as uh, groundbreaking, if that makes sense, to watch. Because with Unbelievable, I didn't know where the story was going to go. Caitlin Dever and that, like I was on her behalf the whole time. Another thing I would say is that with Amanda Knox, she'll account to it herself, but like the amount of naivety there. It's one thing for I think 16-year-old in Unbelievable who was raped, who then got badgered by the cops into saying that she wasn't raped.
And had a troubled childhood.
Right. And like there's so many other factors. With her, it's like there were so many people saying, lawyer up, shut up and lawyer up. And she still was like not doing that. I do sympathize with what happened because, like, again, the prosecution team was just out to get her. But at the same time, you do get a little pissed off with the main character for not just doing what everybody wants them to do, which is like save yourself, you know? And that only happens later on. So she is a very talented writer, so I think she explains it very well. I would also say this is kind of the opposite of Candy Montgomery's case, where everybody didn't want to believe that a woman, a suburban woman who like was very innocent and a pinnacle of her community would murder anybody, especially in the manner that Betty, whatever her face, was murdered.
Yeah, you're talking about like
Just
what Love and
chopped
Death
up,
was based
right?
off of. Yeah.
Versus this, where something similar happens to Meredith, where it is a brutal murder, and the cops go out of the way to be like, it must have been a woman. Which is so strange. They're complete opposites. But just like with Candy Montgomery, that series has been made multiple times.
Right.
So it's not a surprise. And then the third episode reminded me of The Night Of. Right? Because
Yes.
like it's just prison life sucks.
Well, it's funny
No
because
matter what, if you're a guy or a girl, you go to prison, it sucks.
it's funny because the person Jeff Russo did the music for this also did the music for The Night Of. He's done like everything: Miss Davis, Ripley, Zero Day, Alien Earth. I was wondering if the soap opera-ness of this show was going to get in the way because KJ Steinberg, the best thing she's known for is she's done Gossip Girl, Gossip Girl Acapulco, and Gossip Girl Indonesia.
hmm
So just like completely stuck in that world.
The thing is, like, Amanda is 20 years old, and sex is a big part of her like alibi.
Right.
So when they show them making out and having sex and her being close to Raphael, and that being the thing that really pissed off the police, being one of the things, like, how could they be so okay with what's going on? It plays with what actually happened. So I can't say, oh, there's too much love going on.
I mean, Amanda Knox said herself that the storytelling is as factual as possible.
Yeah,
I think that
well, factual from her account.
right.
So again, I'm completely open. Like, we might find out some crazy amount of evidence later on that changes our perspective on things. But right now, it seems like pretty locked and solid that she was innocent, that she was a victim. And that's basically what like, it's weird because the Italian government, I know, has gone back and forth, and that whole idea of the double jeopardy was they were still calling her back, and they might have arrested her back then. However, she has the secret meeting in 2022 or whatever,
Yeah.
like, that was supposed to be some sort of mending, I would assume.
Right. No, it was supposed to be. That's why I'm saying though there were some people being like, "Oh, they're friends now," and they're definitely not.
They're not friends. Also, I don't think many of the police staff got censured or in trouble
Right.
for this, right? Like, they got a slap on the wrist.
No, and if anything, when she got her not guilty verdict, I think in 2015, there were people on the streets that were like rioting about it and very mad because
Because,
they.
yeah, once you sell the public on something, she was talking about how she'd get these strange love letters in prison. This is outside of the show, I know, but like she would get either these very creepy ones, like, we know where your parents had stayed and we're going to go kill them. Because her parents came in, both families, because her dad and her mom were divorced, and they would stay and they were only allowed to visit like 6 or 7 times a month or something like that. And they would be there for most of that time. That's how she got through a lot of this. The same thing happened with Natalie Holloway's mom. She went to Aruba and she stayed there for a good 2 or 3 months as her daughter's investigation was going down. It's just crazy how a parent will like jump into that respect when they're asked for it.
I do have a question about that, and then we'll jump into your rating. But how does it portray her and her parents' relationship? Because in the book, even though or even in real life, she said that even though they split up, they were still both good parents. Like she could tell her mom would trade places with her in a heartbeat.
Yeah. So I think it does a good job with the mom. The dad is talked about a little bit more in the book. So he does come and visit, but so far in the 3 episodes, the mom is the only one who's successfully been able to see her. She does mention that the dad is on his way. In the book, he is there rather earlier, I would say, and they have more discussions. When she finds out that she may have HIV, he's the one I think who tells her, like, I think they're making that up. Like, how do you know that for sure? And her lawyers at that point are like, yeah, the cops are out to get you at this point. They're watching you and they're trying to trip you up and they're trying to mess you
Any
up.
similarity somewhat to adolescence at
Yes.
all?
Well,
Yeah.
in a different point of view, because adolescence, it was all about how well the cops did and how the therapist in charge did an amazing job
Right.
talking to the kid.
I meant more in the terms of like kind of the lawyers, because you're talking a lot about, especially the pilot of adolescence, where it's like they're having to talk and be in that interrogation room.
Yeah, I mean, even Better Call Saul, like him as a terrible lawyer would come in and tell her the same thing. He'd be like, "Stop talking. Just you have the rights that you don't realize that you have." And the problem is, she from the very beginning was just centered on trying to help the cops find the killer. And even when she was coerced into a confession, she was more concerned that she had pushed the cops in the wrong direction. At least that's the way she wrote it. Than that she would actually get in trouble herself. Like when they sent her to prison, and they do this in the show, she says, Am I going to a safe house? Like they don't tell her anything as it's going about.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
So what would you give the show overall out of 10?
it was, if this was fresh, if there wasn't the wealth of other material out there, this would be at least a 7. Some of the cops are cartoonishly evil. Argiro, who's not a cop, he's the warden guy. Rita, Monica. It's frustrating to watch. It's not a fun watch, but I think it does such a good job. I would give it a 6.5 still, which
6.5.
yeah. My cons are still the Giuliano Magnini's backstory. I don't understand why we need to see it from his perspective. They can show us the cop's perspective without having him narrate or talking about his past and how he's been trying to catch this other serial killer for many years.
I can see how that could be jading, especially when the main character is supposed to be Amanda.
Also, one of the questions that the series does not answer is why Raphael, like we can just assume that he was coerced into a confession himself, but why he gave up her alibi. So early on, it seemed like in that interrogation with her, that was the thing that broke her.
Right.
So that's why I went and read his 70-page account. And what they were doing is they were working off each other. Like Monica would go between each room being like, he just gave up your alibi. And then she just put you at the scene of the crime. And then she just signed a confession, or he just signed a confession, and just back and forth until they had basically done exactly what the cops wanted.
I know that Vittoria Nos and Lucrezia Ippolito, they were just made up. They were fictional creations.
Say them
because,
again.
The interpreter and the forensic section.
So they were conglomerated. Like
Right.
they were a bunch of different versions.
Which is exactly what Under the Bridge did,
Right.
and you remember that was a big problem I had kind of with that book, but the reviews have been, I'd say, like, mixed to positive. It has a 5.6 on IMDb with around 700 reviews, but it has a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then, like, 60% critic score. Ready, Steady, Cut I wasn't sure if you were just gonna talk about the third episode. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. The Guardian gave the series 4 out of 5. However, publications like Time did criticize the show for being, like, offering limited insight.
Well, it's not like the show has to sell itself on new facts. That would be weird, right?
Right.
I think that they tried to do something different than just the book by adding a more up-to-date version. She's married now. You see they're even matching the outfits that you can see in the real pictures. And that I think it's interesting also that she meets a Catholic priest or a priest in jail. That's one of her closest allies, I guess, because they get along well. And later on in 2022, he might be the guy who actually arranges the meeting between her and the prosecutor.
It's interesting because Monica Lewinsky executively produced this show,
Mhm.
and there's a big Ryan Murphy connection because the director of the first 2 episodes, Michael Uppendahl, has worked on multiple Ryan Murphy shows like American Horror Story, Ratched, and Monsters, and the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. I'll give you 3 people who were originally supposed to play her because Grace Van Patten wasn't the first choice. In fact, it's funny because the sister in the show that plays Amanda Knox's sister is Grace Van Patten's actual sister, Anna Van Patten.
Yeah, I haven't seen her too much yet. She was talked about in the book, though.
Yeah, so I'll give you 3 choices. You have to pick who the initial first choice was and even signed on for a little bit. Kate McKinnon, Kate Winslet.
Kate McKinnon?
Yeah, or
Wait, these are for the mom or for
or
her?
the main person.
Okay.
Kate McKinnon, Kate Winslet, or Margaret Qualley.
Margaret Qualley is
Yeah,
the
you
only
got
one
it
in
right.
who's like everybody's super old.
Well,
What?
the reason I say is because the dropout, Kate McKinnon, was supposed to play Elizabeth Holmes, and then Kate Winslet, she was supposed to be in a show next year that's also a docudrama, but she ended up dropping out as well.
Right. I probably would have used Kate Winslet as like the mom's, like one of her versions, because Sharon, whatever her face
Sharon
is,
Horgan.
yeah, is around her age. And then also, I think that the casting for Raphael, he looks a lot like the picture of him on the cover of Your Honor. So I think they did good casting for him as well. Your Honor being his book.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the Brian.
Right. No, I knew what you got confused with. It was like Your Honor, my case with Amanda Knox or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny how his predated hers, and yet they go over the same events. If you read about how they met and stuff like that, it's just they almost are almost perfect identifiers with each other.
I know he showed up at the premiere. Like they reunited when they were premiering the TV
So they're
series.
still friends. Or they became friends after, because for a while they felt betrayed
Right.
towards each other. So it must have been awkward. Yeah, no, this is a strange case, and I am happy that I learned a little bit more about it. I feel a little bit more educated, but I'm sure there's stuff that we didn't talk about. But as far as the first 3 episodes of this show, I think we've covered them. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.